This is a game from, believe it or not, 2005. My first international tournament, the World Youth Championship under 10.
Wow.
I was 9 years old. And I think I told you this story, but this tournament was so poorly organized. And the World Youth Chess Championships are generally known to be, like, the highest bidder is usually the most corrupt organizer. So the organization usually isn't great. But this organizer actually went to jail after this tournament concluded because the temperature in the playing hall was over 100 degrees, and the air conditioning did not work. And actually, one of the kids fainted during the tournament and had to be wheeled out on a stretcher.
Holy shit.
So he faced criminal charges after the tournament concluded. So in that literal boiling pot, I was playing my games. I mean, that was my first tasting of international chess. I'm like, is this what chess looks like on the international scene? The answer is no. That's uncharacteristic. But just to give you some context.
I think it should, though. I think it should. That's where men are born.
That is where men are born.
You went in there 9 years old and you came out a fucking man.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, some things got small and some things got big in that playing hall. And, you know.
Amen.
Things were really decided there. So. This position occurred in one of my games, and it is obviously it's white to move. He's just captured a knight that I put on c5 with his knight from a6. The question is obviously, well, how do we recapture this knight? And obviously supply an explanation for your decision. You have two viable options. Taking with a rook would be a terrible idea, just blundering the rook.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you for the sub, Bearcuffs.
So taking with the D pawn now has your E pawn not protected by a pawn anymore.
Right.
It's only protected by the knight.
And the bishop.
And the bishop, but it's not protected by any pawns. Taking with the B pawn does the same to the A pawn.
So let me ask you this. Sorry to interrupt your genius, the Einsteinian thinking process, but
it's okay. Yeah, you can stop it.
Could the pawn on e5, before you complete your theory of general relativity, could the pawn on e5 potentially be defended by a pawn?
The F pawn.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's another important thing that you sometimes do. When you play d takes c5, this pawn is not weak. Number one, it's not attacked by anything. Number two, it's protected by pieces. So a weak pawn isn't automatically a pawn that's not defended by any pawns. It's a pawn that cannot even hypothetically be protected by any other pawns. You see the difference there? This e pawn can later on be defended by f4. So it's not a big problem that we've left it quote-unquote weak. So that shouldn't be a defining consideration. But okay, continue thinking.
Yeah, so I mean, with that in mind, now you take with the D pawn.
You take with the D pawn, and what square do you vacate for one of your pieces?
No, I now have the D4 for my knight.
Exactly what I wanted to hear. He's got to move his queen away. Now, do you play knight d4 immediately, or is there a preliminary move you make?
Do we need to prep it? Do we need to start looking into like how to make this more devastating?
No, it's a simpler question. Like, look at this position very closely. Can we put the knight on d4 right now? Or do we need to do something first?
We need to take the... Yeah, we have to take the bishop first.
He's attacking our bishop with two pieces. He's extraying it. So don't forget about, when you're playing positionally, don't forget about tactics. Don't forget to check for hanging pieces. All of that still remains. It's just that, you just need to remember that. Knight d4 attacking the queen. And guess what I did after he brings his queen back to d7? See,
I pissed your pants.
Yeah, well, after, of course, that goes without saying. Oh, this is amazing you said that. Amazing you said that. We're actually on the same wavelength. Okay, might be TMI, but I want people to understand the atmosphere here. This is great. During the second round, now, mind you, okay, I'm 9 years old. This is France, first international trip. I'm nervous, right? Nobody speaks English. This is not Paris. Like I told you, all these tournaments are in shitholes. This is a town called Belfort. And I need to go to the bathroom. And it's the second round. And I don't have a lot of time on my clock, okay? So I make a move. I get up. I start looking for the bathroom. Normally, there's a sign in these playing halls, the international sign of needing to fucking urinate, okay? How hard could it be? Can't find it. Usually, it's exit the playing hall. I asked the tournament organizer, like the little men at the desk, I tried bathroom, toilet, whatever, like fucking le pee coming out the pants. No, nothing. They're like looking at me as if I'm from fucking Mars. I tried it in the most understandable international language possible. Nothing. And finally, as I'm about to pee my pants, I discovered that there are porta potties outside that the players are supposed to use.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, and you can understand what state those porta potties were in. But I narrowly averted disaster in the second round. And I remember that to this day.
Well, that's good. You didn't blunder pissed pants that day. Good shit.
I did not. Although there was a little residue left. I don't know where those pants had a proper funeral. Let me just put it that way.
Well, I'd hope you'd outgrow them within 15 years, if nothing else.
You'd be surprised. Just take a look at my wardrobe. So in this position, you brought to my attention a problem with this pawn on e5. Guess what I did now? Another prophylactic move. Just making sure that no monkey business is going to happen.
I'm imagining you protected that pawn with f4.
That's exactly what I did. Another maintenance move. Nothing wrong with doing something for the future self, in case he ever attacks that pawn again. And in fact, the rest of this game, the game lasted another 23 moves, but it was very one-sided. And I just want you to find one more idea. So he moved his knight back to g8. Sorry, no, he did not do that. Yeah, he did do that. He moved his knight back to g8. And here I just played the move g3, just, protecting another pawn, just chilling. Look at my position. I'm completely dominating him. If he ever tries to break apart my pawn chain with b6, how are you going to respond to this move?
Yeah, you're just pushing that pawn up to c6.
Another benefit of putting that knight on d4, bingo, and then potentially supporting it with b5. So he can't even do that. What I want you to do is find a plan of action here. We've put all our pieces on beautiful squares. Now we need to start attacking, but how do we attack here? What move do we make? And this is going to be challenging, but I really want you to kind of learn these attacking skills. You need to break open the position a little bit. Are there any pawn breakthroughs that come to mind?
Nothing immediate. The one thing that I keep looking at is pushing b4 to b5 and then playing c6 just to have another pawn to defend that as a breakthrough. But reasonable plan. But I was thinking more on the king side. There is a pawn breakthrough that you can effect immediately here. Is it pushing up? Well, it can't be pushing up. It is pushing up the f6 pawn, isn't it? Or the f4 pawn to f5. It is. And it's tit for tat. You weaken the e-pawn, yes, but you have total positional domination. So the time has come to transform that advantage into something specific, something concrete. So does this move make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he takes, you take with the knight. You don't want to put the rook there, right? Right, you take with the knight, and then I'll have that x-ray on the g7 pawn. Then you start looking for tactics. Mm-hmm. He plays bishop c7, attacking my pawn. Well, I defend it with queen e2. Again, nothing, I'm not curing COVID with this move, I'm just defending the pawn. After queen e7, the last move that I'll sort of ask you to find, because the game drags on, it's just a move that has to occur to you intuitively. It's a further breakthrough that exposes essentially all of the weaknesses in his position. Well, what I looked at is, since now the bishop is blocking that rook, it was pushing the c5 pawn to c6. If he takes, you take, you're attacking queen again. You mean like here, here, here? Yeah. What I would argue is there's two problems with this move. Number one, you're derailing the knight from its beautiful central square. Mm-hmm. And now it's hunting for gold. And if you take a7, first of all, you've done all of this for a measly pawn. And second of all, you've actually lost the knight. How can black win the knight now? Yeah, you just move the bishop, right? Yeah. There's no squares. Well, bishop b6 check. Otherwise, you would have taken the rook. But this is is check. Oh, you have to deliver the check. And then you take the rook, and then you take the knight. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is that when you're attacking on the king side, the best thing that can happen to you is for the queen side to be closed. If the queen side is closed, that means you don't have to worry about anything that happens there. So by playing c6, you think that you're doing yourself a favor
but you're actually doing your opponent a favor by opening up that side of the board, giving him a little bit of breathing room for his pieces.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so it's a breakthrough on the king side, and it's technically a pawn sacrifice, although if he accepts that pawn sacrifice, he loses immediately. You rip apart the defenses on his king side. Anything coming to mind?
Okay. Is it you take this pawn first, so you take e6 here with f5. He can't take with queen because it's protected by knight. He has to take with pawn if he takes it all, and then you take rook.
He takes with his rook.
Mm-hmm. And then
well, all that you've done there is traded more pieces and opened the position up and weakened this pawn. I can tell you the move.
That doesn't work. Damn.
It's a breakthrough. You push a pawn even further forward, shattering his kingside defenses.
Is it just pushing the pawn instead of taking it to f6?
It is. Okay. And maybe the hesitancy is that if he takes it with his knight, and this is again where you have to reappraise what's happened. What have you now gained as a consequence of giving that pawn up? Which is a huge... I mean, look at this. I mean, the bishop is x-raying the knight. So now you have a crushing move. You have several crushing moves. I want you to find one of them.
Well, the first one I'm looking at is bringing knight to f5. Then if he, he wouldn't be able to take with pawn because then I just win a queen.
That's a great move. The move that I think wins the fastest is in the same spirit. If you move the knight away, you threaten to take on f6 with check and win the queen, right?
Yeah.
So by playing knight f5, you obstruct the rook's control over the knight. He can go queen d8 and he's still kicking even though he's completely lost. Could you move the knight somewhere, attacking the queen A, and B, not obstructing the bishop and the rook's control over f6? There is a move that checks both boxes.
A move with this knight that attacks the queen?
And simultaneously, thereby preparing bishop takes f6 check, winning the game.
I mean, the only tile I see that does that is c6, but it's taken by pawn, so I don't think that's the right one.
But now you take the knight with the bishop and you fork the king and the queen.
Oh, I see. So, oh Jesus, yep, I see.
I mean, it's been a lot of different tactics, so I don't hold that against you. But you see the idea now.
I see. Yeah, since the bishop's protected by the rook, when you deliver that check, the queen can't take it to relieve that pressure, has to move king.
Exactly, and that's it. I mean, he's got to move his queen, you take the knight, and finally you have checkmate in one. What move am I talking about?
Yeah, you just bring the queen over to g4.
Yeah, you're seeing these mates fast, which is good. Your like basic tactics have gotten to a very good point where like you don't need to necessarily work on them specifically. But I think that's a good sort of maintenance workout for now. I mean, we could do 40 of these positions, and we'll continue to do them. But I want to give you kind of a general sense of the kinds of ideas that exist in real chess, so that you have a greater menu to choose from. Because again, you get to a situation where you don't know what to do, and you have a very limited number of options at your disposal. Do I attack the king? Well, there's nothing to do in that front. So what the fuck do I do? You know, and then you start hesitating and come up with something shitty. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better sense of what to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so let's do a little bit of openings as perhaps our final activity for the day, if that sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
If you're not overwhelmed by all of this. I know this is all new.
Okay. No, I think this is all very good stuff. I always need to get this kind of exercise in.
Yeah, and it'll... You know, it might take some time to come together, but it will. You do enough of these positions, and you know, eventually, you just you just start to find these plans automatically. That's what signifies improvement. It's when you don't have to consciously ask yourself these questions. They enter your subconscious, essentially. Okay, so you see the starting position?
Yeah.
I'm going to start off showing you the Scotch, 4-night Scotch, and I'll give you the lay of the land, the crash course. Will you be ready to immediately start playing it? Perhaps, because part of the appeal behind this opening is how intuitive it is. It's really just, it involves the development of all of your pieces to very active squares, and it poses immediate challenges to your opponent. And there's a lot of lines where black just loses very quickly. People are not going to know it as well as they know the Italian. So you're going to win a lot of games with it if you learn it properly.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
It starts on a familiar note, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. And now there's two ways to reach it. The move order that I personally like, that I think is a little bit more pure, is the move knight to c3. Okay? And black 99.9% of the time will play the move knight f6. There are some people who play bishop c5 here. This is already kind of a mistake. And here you have a really cool little tactic that I'm sure you have run across this before. I'm going to show you what it is. You take on e5 with the knight, and you don't blunder the knight. How do you recover it?
I was going to say you deliver a check and win it, but there's no checks to deliver.
I think I know what kind of tactics you need to keep solving. The forks are a little bit, they need to be crisper.
Is it just a pawn fork?
It is d4.
Okay.
I mean, you got to win the piece back. But what you get in return is that you get huge piece development. Black has been dicking around with his pieces, so black needs to regain that pawn, right? If you take one of his pieces, you're going to be a pawn up. So normally black does something like bishop takes d4. You play queen takes d4, you're skewering the knight to the pawn. And if black defends the knight with d6, white is essentially winning now with, well, you can dislodge this knight from e5. How can you do that and then win that pawn on g7?
I just play a pawn move, so I'm bringing pawn f4, right?
Bingo. He's got to move his knight, and then you take on g7. You're in great shape. You might even win that rook at the end. So just remember this idea of taking on e5 with the knight when his bishop is on c5. If he responds with queen f6, a la Moistcr1tikal versus XQC, what comes to mind in terms of, well, he's hitting the pawn on f2 and hitting the knight on e5. Can you defend both at the same time and solidify your extra pawn? It's simpler than you think it is. Like, it's one of these retreating moves that you might have a little bit of trouble with because it's a retreating move.
Yeah, because it's just bringing the knight back to f3, right?
Right, exactly. Bringing the knight back to f3, then you keep developing. You can hit that queen with knight d5. That's a move that recurs pretty often in the Scotch. So bishop c5 is basically shit. Nobody's really going to do that. And now you play the move d4. Again, the vast majority of people are going to capture on d4 with the pawn. There's really no other good or even common moves in this position. The only move that you have to kind of know is bishop to b4. And this is a little bit theoretical, which I don't love, but you're going to encounter this so infrequently that if you even know one move in this position, you're going to throw people off, which is knight takes e5. Okay? Should be logical to you, just taking the pawn. Now, black can reclaim the pawn with what move? Using the pin that he has just created. What move can black now play?
Yeah, he just takes e4.
He takes e4. Now you bring your queen out to f3. Defending the knight, hitting his knight, threatening checkmate. Black's move is essentially forced. He has to do the same thing that you would have done in that other position, right? Bring his knight back to f6. Now he's attacking d4. Can you develop one of your pieces and simultaneously guard d4?
Yeah, I'm bringing bishop to e3.
Bringing bishop to e3, then you bring the bishop to d3. And later on, maybe next session, we'll look at a classical game that shows you how to play in these types of positions with symmetrical pawns on d4 and d5. And that's going to clarify a lot of the common strategies for you.
Okay.
But for now, we'll keep our eyes on the prize. I want to kind of give you the lay of the land. So here you take on e5 with the knight. If he takes back first and then plays knight takes e4, do you remember our coverage of the pin variation? So
you said it was shit, right?
It was shit, and I mean, I don't expect you to remember the moves, but this position is reached in theory. Do you remember the actual move that White plays here to refute it? I'll give you a hint. White hits that knight on e4, and he hits the pawn on g7 simultaneously.
Oh, yeah, you just bring the queen out to g4,
Bingo.
right?
Yep. And then if knight takes c3, okay. Do you remember the move if knight takes c3? You don't take the knight, obviously, because black takes and forks your rook. That would be a shitty idea. Just the next move.
You're just taking... You're just taking the pawn, right?
Bingo. Take the pawn on g7, then you play a3, etc., etc. So here, the idea is borrowed. It's, well, not borrowed. It's the same idea. So takes, queen g4. Same exact concept. Okay. But slightly different. Whoa, Mr. Llama with 712 raid. Thank you so much, Mr. Llama. Appreciate the huge raid. Wow, now the pressure's really on, Charlie. You better find the right moves, or you're going to make me look bad, which ultimately is...
No, you got to be a good teacher. Yeah.
Well,
pressure's on you, man.
Well, is it? Well, we'll see about that. So here you actually have a choice. You could take the pawn on g7. Simpler, actually, would be to snap off this bishop. Cutting Black's nuts off. Because without this bishop, Black is riddled with weaknesses. Knight d5, and now where do you park your queen? I think there's a name for this, where you like swing back and forth, like a grandfather clock. Where should the queen now land?
Like a windshield wiper?
Like a windshield wiper. The windshield wiper, perfect.
That's a shitty name. Don't you ever use that again. Do you just bring it back over to g4 to threaten that pawn again?
Excuse me. Copyright, Charlie. Trademark 2020 by the genius, Charlie. Bring it back to g4. And if Black castles, another pin variation theme, this is something you should see quickly. White to play and pick off an exchange or deliver checkmate.
Yeah, so I'm just bringing the bishop out there to c4.
That attacks the knight. He moves the knight away. I don't know why you're so attracted by that. This is a very common tactic.
Oh
X-ray.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm just bringing the bishop out to h6.
Bingo. He's got to play g6. Now you take the rook. Then you bring the bishop to c4, castle, etc.
I was a little too early, but yeah.
So you see it. Good. So this is all you need to know in this line. I mean, bishop b4 is not common. So e takes d4 is what you're going to see most often. And you play knight takes d4. Now, what is the general rationale behind doing this? Well, by playing d4, you're opening up a really nice development square for your bishop. You're bringing the knights out onto good squares. I mean, what could be terrible about that, right? It should be pretty logical to you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Black has essentially three moves that we're going to look at. The main move is bishop to b4, pinning your knight. This move looks scary, but we'll talk about how you respond to that. The second move is bishop to c5. And we'll look at more than three moves. It's just that today I don't want to bog you down too much. So the third move that we're going to look at is a demonstration move through the lens of which I'm going to show you kind of the common ideas in this line. Now, Black can also take the knight on d4, which is not a great idea because then your queen comes out into a very active square. We'll talk about that too. The move that we'll use for demonstration purposes is just d6. Now, why is this move shitty from a positional point of view? What does it block?
You can't develop your f bishop, your dark tile bishop.
You got to just develop it to like e7, which is a pretty shitty square. Now, where would you develop your f1 bishop?
We don't get a whole lot out of pinning the knight.
Nice.
We just play the pawn. So yeah, so we just want to put the bishop back on c4.
Right. Well, if we pin the knight, how does he defend the pin?
Oh, you could just break it with a bishop.
He breaks it with the bishop. Right. Well, he can't play the pawn because then you take twice. So he breaks it with the bishop. He played bishop c4 instead.
Right.
Bishop e7, you castle. He castles. And here you have several very much viable ways of developing your pieces. But this position allows you to make exactly the kinds of maintenance moves that perhaps you normally struggle with. Now, I would delay the development of the c1 bishop because I want to see what Black does first. Does that kind of make sense? I don't want to decide where I put the bishop. Maybe it'll be e3, maybe g5, but let's see what Black does first. So what's a normal good, solid maintenance move, bringing one of the pieces in. You did it in your warm-up game. That's also very flexible. It's a move you know is going to be good.
Yeah, just E1 with the rook, right?
Exactly. Now, can you give me another one of those moves which prevents one of his pieces from developing to its most active square? This is a prophylactic move I'm looking for. It covers a very important square.
Yeah, so I want to... Right now it's that pawn, right? We don't want the knight on E4, so we protect... Or no, that's protected by the knight.
That is already
so that's not the
protected.
one.
What we're looking at is where could he put his C8 bishop most actively, and how do we take that square away from him?
Yeah, it's going to G4 with that bishop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just push that H pawn.
We do. I like the move H3. Now, the last thing that we'll talk about for now, and then this bishop can come out to G5, the rook to E1, you get a very harmonious, free, better position. Now, a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, I'm calling it, will take on D4, and they'll follow up with C5. That's the instinct that you had in that warm-up game, but this is actually a horrible idea, because can you now tell me what long-term weakness does this move create, which you can then attack?
That pawn on D6 does not have a pawn to defend it anymore.
So once you drop your queen to D3, can you give me two moves that put as much pressure as possible on that D6 pawn? Develop your pieces with an eye toward attacking that pawn.
We have bishop to F4 attacking the pawn directly, and we have knight to... Oh, no. Yeah, we have knight to B5.
Potentially, although, again, you know what I feel about how I feel about these knight moves to the side?
Yeah.
In a situation like this, knight B5 would be inadvisable. It would drop the E4 pawn. So you want to keep your knights, unless you have a very good reason not to, you want to keep your knights controlling important central squares. So I'm looking for a different move here, a more harmonious move.
Okay.
Keep pressuring that pawn on D6. It's a very natural move.
Is it just pushing the pawn up there to E5?
Well, then you don't attack the pawn. You allow black to get rid of it.
Yeah, no, he just gets the... Yeah,
So
I see that. Okay.
You're literally looking for a way to attack this pawn further. Don't forget about your rooks. I feel like you're only looking at your minor pieces, your knights or bishops, but your rooks can participate in the attack.
So we just need it on D1 then.
Rook A to D1. This other rook could come out to E1. Look at how beautiful white's position is. Every piece is playing. Now, what would be a plan in this position? Well, there's a million things you could do. You could move the queen out of the way, setting up an X-ray, and then you could play E5 when the time is right, such that black cannot take the pawn, and then you take D6. That would be one plan. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Another plan would be I think I mentioned the rook lift. And a third plan would be potentially bringing a knight to D5, just a very nice central square, and keep pushing him off the board bit by bit, improving the position step by step until eventually something cracks. Either he allows an attack against his king, or, I don't know, one of many things might happen, okay? And you need to be okay with that. You don't know exactly how you're going to win this game, but something is going to give here.
Before we get too deep into the openings, there's one thing I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
This is something I picked up during 3-minute games just because I struggled so much with time. Can you reset the board and I show you something? And you just play against it like in the most natural way that you would?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll go back to the start.
Okay, so I did this a lot of times, and almost zero, I'd say like 50% of the time, I would just immediately win the game. Assuming knight gets played. So you play F6.
Okay, so I'm just manually relaying because not all of the moves are... Oh yeah, the fried liver attack.
Yeah, and then it's take here.
And then takes F7. Yep, that is the famous line. So black has to play knight A5 here if he knows what he's doing.
Okay.
But this is... how did you find out about this?
I played against it. And I fended it off, but I thought it was extremely strong.
It's winning for white. This is a forced win for white.
Yeah.
Knight C3 here. Attacks the knight on D5. It's a famous knight sacrifice. It's been around since the 19th century. And it refutes the move knight takes D5. So that is one of the appeals of playing this at your level. But I was under the impression that the vast majority of people go bishop C5. So
no, most people... Well, when I played it, most people developed that knight.
Really?
Four knights is the most common.
Really? Okay, so we can actually make a detour. I could show you this specific line, and then you'll have two potential lines at your disposal.
Now, keep in mind this was at 900, so it might be different at 1,000 now.
Well,
but
let's.
up until 1,000.
This is like a no-brainer. Like it'll take me 5 minutes to show you the ropes in that position, and then you'll have this as a weapon if you don't feel like playing the Scotch. If you're feeling lucky, and if they play Bishop C5 here, of course there's theory in this line too. I could show you mainline theory, but it's a little bit dry, and a lot of people know this. So after knight f6, knight g5. D5 takes. If they make the correct move, knight a5, you're supposed to give a check on b5. Okay? And they're supposed to block with a pawn. Now, I think most people at your level will not know this. They will block with a bishop. And here you make a very strong move. Try to remember this move. You play queen to e2. And you simultaneously defend the bishop and hit the pawn on e5. If they take your... Whoops, sorry. If they take the bishop, you take back... forking the king and the knight. They can unfork themselves with c6. But now you just take c6. And again, they're in trouble. Because if they take with a knight, then what hangs?
The pawn.
The pawn on b7. And if they take with a pawn, what hangs?
The pawn. Well, no, it's protected by knight.
Yeah, well, a pawn, but which pawn?
Yeah, the e5 pawn.
Bingo, the e5 pawn hangs. So queen e2 is a very important move. If they take on d5, and one of my earliest games continued. Now, it's very important to give this check first. You do not want to go knight c3 first, because that allows the defensive move bishop e6, and black is winning. So first you give a check.
So I can tell you how the computer tells you the optimal play is here. When you deliver this check, it tells you to play queen right there to intercept. But then I always played this, and that's when they'd panic. Sometimes they just immediately just fucking checkmate themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, this white is, remember, white is up a pawn now, and white is still attacking. So in this situation, this is one of those cases where you could trade queens and get a much better endgame, and that probably constitutes white's best option. But if you want to refrain from the queen trade, you could also play something like queen e3 and just keep the queens on the board. Then you castle and quickly start attacking that king, which has lost its castling rights, remember.
Okay, that makes sense. So what I typically do when they drop king, I take here, delivers the check, they take, I take, and then, sorry, I don't take, sorry, I went out of order, but 9 times out of 10, they're going to drop the queen, at least in the games at 900, and then I win a rook. I just wanted to know how to play against it in case I just forget.
Oh, you're talking about it from black side, so this is what you face.
Yeah, I played this to win a fucking ton of games, but I never really thought, like, the right plays against it. I just try and fend it off as best as possible.
Do you want to learn it? So which side are we looking at? Both sides, I guess. You want to be able to play it with white, and you want to be able to defend against it with black?
It's not something I really care to play. It just seemed like a little speed run strategy, and if I got... The way I'd defend is I'd immediately play this like the second I saw bishop come out. But I didn't know if there was something better I could do.
Oh, okay. So you want to know how to play against it with black?
Ideally, yeah.
Okay, so what you want to do... Well, I could show you... Let me think about this. I could show you a very cool trap line that will win you a lot of games, but it's unsound, but nobody's going to know the refutation.
Sounds fine to me, man.
It's called the Traxler variation, bishop c5. And it looks like a horrible move. It looks like a blunder. Because it looks like it blunders the fucking pawn on f7 with a fork. Like, what kind of idiot comes up with this? And actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up my... I have some analysis here. I want to make sure I don't fuck this up for you. It's been, mind you, years since I've actually looked at this line. So I'm pulling up my own analysis. Give me a second. So knight takes f7 is what you're going to face. And now you make an amazing move. You're going to have fun here. Bishop takes f2 check. What the fuck are you doing? Like, you're hanging everything. So, obviously, well, they take your bishop, right? We'll talk about some of the sidelines here, but I want to spend some time on this because it really is worth. So let's say they take the bishop, right? I'm assuming that's what most people are going to do. And then you play, well, what do you think that you do after they take the bishop? This next move is actually very natural.
Yeah, you just have to move the queen, right? It's got to go to e7.
Well, no. Think about the spirit of the Traxler. You've already sacked a bishop, and now you're just going to humbly move your queen away and give up a fucking rook. That's not the. This is a big dick line. I thought you were into that kind of shit, but apparently, apparently you're playing queen e7 here rather than continuing the attack.
Is it bringing f1 or f8 with the rook? So when it takes with the
that's a good thought. It's actually just it's a check that you're missing because you're tunnel visioning this attack. So you're not looking at his king and what can happen to his king.
So you're just delivering another check with the knight at g4.
Not at g4. That blunders the knight to the queen, but you're taking a pawn with check.
Oh, e4.
Yeah, that's just a bit of a blind spot. Knight e4. Okay. Sorry, this is a little bit theoretical, so if you feel like it's too much maintenance for this one line, tell me, but it is going to become very popular, so I think it's going to be worthwhile to know this, and it's going to win you a lot of games just on the spot. They go back to g1 95% of the time. In fact, that's the only good move. If they bring the king forward to e3, and one moment, my computer is not handling all of that traffic. Give me a second. Computer is freezing up. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, just one moment. There we go. So if he brings the king up to e3, then we play queen to h4. And if they take the rook, we have checkmate in just a couple of moves. Do you see how this starts?
The first move being, no, that hangs the knight.
Yep. I like that you didn't make that move, relinquishing control over that knight. You want to give a check, but simultaneously keep the knight on e4 under control.
Right. So you deliver the next check at f4, protected by pawn.
Bingo. If they go king d3, it's checkmate in 2 moves. Find it.
You deliver a check at b4 with the knight. He can't go to c3. It's protected by r knight, which gives him 1 escape square, which is d4. You bring knight back to f6.
This square is covered. So he's got to go back to e2. You're absolutely right, though, and you have checkmate in 1 here.
Yeah, and now you're bringing the queen to f2, right?
Bingo. So checkmate. Okay, so this move, I mean, they will not know what to do after queen h4. And we'll flesh this out further. We'll practice this, but giving you the lay of the land right now.
Okay. That seems cool. But the way, like I said, the way when I see it with the bishop come out, I just immediately play I don't remember, h6 to cut it off.
In which position? Here?
Yeah, so the second they play that bishop, I just play this to cut off g5.
If you want to just cut everything out, you can just develop your bishop to c5 first, so that the g5 score remains under your control.
Okay, so just instead of even playing the pawn.
Yeah, you don't need to play h6. Actually it's a bad move because it gives them more time to develop, and then you develop your knight to f6 on the next move, so that if they play knight g5, you can just castle and defend the pawn. So just remember, don't play knight f6 there, play bishop c5. We can continue that Traxler line later. It's a good line to know in general. Once you get to, I guess, 12, 1300, we can pick this up. But I just wanted you to know what's out there.
Okay, that makes sense.
For now, just play bishop c5 first, and then you don't even need to play h6. That's the key. Okay.
What did you call it again? That whole line in the beginning where it's attacking that f7 pawn right away. What is that called?
So knight g5 is called the fried liver attack. I have no fucking clue why. I hate fried liver. Just foie gras. That's the concept makes me rich. Sorry, I hope maybe you're a fan.
I've never had it. It sounds terrible.
Wait, I need to close my fucking window. One sec. There is a scary fucking bug. Okay, get the fuck out. Let me just make sure my balcony door is closed. It's open. Lock it. All right. Grandmaster attacked by North Carolinian hornet. Okay, we're good.
I'm glad you survived.
Yes, I hate bugs, just so you know.
You did more than I would. I would have just called my girlfriend to take care of it. I can't be around bugs.
I can't either. I scream and run out of the room when I encounter the tiniest nuisance.
There was a lizard living in my house. It's not even a bug. There was a fucking lizard living in my house for the last couple months. I was going to bed fearful. One night, it was above my door going into the bedroom, and I was like, holy fuck, I'm not sleeping tonight. It's like a curse. And the next night, it was on my fucking TV, and I couldn't touch it, so I just left it there the whole night.
Oh my god,
letting
just
it.
sat there.
Yeah, no, he was putting me in check right there. I didn't want to take it. I couldn't do anything about it. I was afraid of him. I hate little uh, creepy crawlies where they're not supposed to be.
Disgusting motherfucker is just gonna like
Yeah,
bite
it's
you. Yeah.
disgusting. Yeah.
I don't know. I can't. Yeah, it's just one of my biggest fears. Anyways, but this line is called the fried liver attack, and the response bishop c5 is called the Traxler variation. I assume after a guy named Traxler. He's not a famous chess player. Not all variations are named after a famous chess player. He was just someone who happened to develop this first, I suppose.
Okay.
Someone I was asking, was it a Charlotte Hornet? Very funny. Yeah, so that's just I guess the etymology of it. But anyways, we can finish off that line, that demonstration line in the Scotch, and that'll give you kind of a sound basis, unless you have more questions about this line.
No, I think you answered it pretty well.
Okay, so back to the Scotch, knight c3, d4. So we were looking at sort of the demonstration line d6, where you develop your bishop to c4, castle, rook e1, etc. So I think you get the point here. Let's just take a brief look at the main line. Sorry, it's here in the bishop e4, and that'll kind of set you up with this initial basics of the line. So here you take the knight on c6, okay? Discharging the central tension.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what pawn he takes with. They're always going to take with a b pawn, because taking with a d pawn allows you to take the queen with check and, you know, deprive them of castling rights. You don't have to take their queen with check, but most people are not going to take with a d pawn for that reason. Now, do you see what black is threatening here?
We still have the pawn hanging. That knight still can't move. Could place that rook on b8 since it's now an open file.
Yeah, but there's a more immediate threat that exploits the pin. I mean, it's a move that I named previously. It just happened to not work in a previous line, but it still is a threat.
Like there's just, I guess I don't see what's
Knight takes
exploiting the
c4.
pin besides the
Knight
pickup.
takes c4.
Oh yeah. Oh Jesus. Okay. Yeah, because you can't take with the knight. I get it.
Yep. Don't forget about those moves. When the knight is pinned, it doesn't have control over any squares. So you play the move bishop to d3. The idea being reinforcing the pawn so that if knight takes, you take with a bishop.
Mm-hmm.
And then the follow-up is very simple. You castle, and you want to put this c1 bishop on g5, and you just want to checkmate the knight by playing e5. And what you like about this line is that you can very quickly play the moves f4 and e5. I know you like to bring that f-pawn out. You get to do that here. So for example, if they castle, you can castle first, just tucking your king away. And if they make a move such as d6, you play bishop g5, and you have a very simple plan. f4 and e5. And winning that knight and crashing through, delivering checkmate. It's a very intuitive line once you get the basics of it down.
Okay.
I've went fast through this line, but essentially that is the rationale. Those are the basics of the four-knight Scotch. This bishop on d3, it might look dull, but it's actually trained at that h7 pawn. You see, when white plays e5, it opens up the bishop's contact to h7.
Mm-hmm.
So is that making sense?
Yeah. Can you just play like the progression from there though, just so I see it?
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't mind.
Totally,
Okay.
yeah. So exactly was the wrong response to that query. It's a complete non sequitur. So let's say bishop e6 happens. Well, given what I told you, what do you think you do?
You're still just pushing that f pawn, right?
F-pawn.
That hasn't changed anything.
Right. So let's say that they play h6, trying to break the pin. Where do you go?
We're just dropping the bishop back to h4, right?
Right. And there's one thing you have to know. Let's say they go rook e8. You don't want to go e5 immediately, because after takes, it might look like you win the knight, but they have a counter blow that wins this pawn on e5. Can you spot it? It's a little fork. It forks the king and the pawn, I guess.
Forks the king and the pawn. So you're bringing the queen to d4?
Yep, that's exactly what black does. Unpinning himself, attacking the bishop, the king, and the pawn. And then you basically want to take the pawn afterwards. So
Okay.
this is a perfect example of prophylaxis. The problem is queen d4 isn't such a scary move in and of itself. It's the problem. The problem is that it's a check. So can we take the sting out of that move with a prophylactic move here?
Yeah, we just tucked the king at h1.
Bingo. And now we're threatening e5. And e5 is a huge threat that cannot be easily stopped, because if black gets his queen out of the pin, then what does this allow?
We win the knight.
Well, we don't win the knight, but we take the knight and we ruin black's pawn structure, essentially.
Right.
And now, how do we progress the attack?
We want to push up that f pawn.
Yeah, that's a great start. We lock up black's pieces, and now we have the king all to ourselves. And how do we finish him off?
We're throwing the queen over to g4.
There's even a better square than g4. What attracts you about this move is that it's a check, but it's counterproductive because now he gets to bring his rook into g8.
Okay.
So where do you want the queen?
Yeah, so we're swinging it all the way over to h5 then.
Bingo. And now, finally, you have a very conventional idea. You'll find it immediately. How do we actually bring this attack to the next level?
By doing a rook lift, right?
That's exactly what we do by doing a rook lift to f3 to g3. Black is not able to retain all of his pawns. And, you know, there's some work required to checkmate black, but a lot of your games are going to take one of these types of avenues, you know, where you, one way or another, you either get e5 in, or you take the knight, ruin the pawn structure, and checkmate them. So,
okay, so going down the line, I'm looking for the f and the e pawn. I'm looking to play those two moves up there at f4 and e5, right?
Right,
Taking
but
control of e5.
you're not dogmatically like putting your head down and doing it at all costs. The funny thing is, even when e5 is a sacrifice, it's still a good idea. So let's say, I'm just going to play a couple of sample moves here. Let's say you play e5 and you're like, oh shit, you know, like I blundered the pawn. Well, you didn't actually blunder the pawn. You've sacrificed it because now the rook has contact on the knight. And what kind of move can we play now? It's nothing, it's not a sacrifice, it's just a helpful move that ruins the pawn structure in front of black's king.
We just take that knight.
We take that knight, we force the pawn capture. Now, where can this knight on c3 go in order to attack the pawn on f6 and cause...
e4.
Yeah, knight e4, etc. I mean, one good thing about the Scotch is that you are almost guaranteed these positions where you're trying to attack one way or another. You're going to learn a lot more about the art of properly attacking and positioning your pieces and when to play fast, when to play slowly. All of those secondary skills that are going to bring you to 1300-1400, they're a lot easier to attain, if that makes sense, by playing this opening rather than by playing the Italian with d3, because you literally get the same exact types of positions. You don't normally get a chance to attack quickly. Here, you're always going to get a chance to pressure black's king one way or another. That's going to propel you to new heights, essentially.
Okay, yeah, let's take it back from the top then.
Let's review. And there's one more line we have to look at, but first I want to review this. So take white, and I'm going to take black.
Okay.
So if bishop b4, just in your head, do you remember the move?
I'm taking the pawn, right?
With?
My knight.
With the knight, yep. So I'm going to take your pawn. The other move we have to look at is bishop c5, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that separately. So let's say bishop b4 for now.
Okay, then the line continues. I'm going here.
I'm looking at your stream because it's not. Now, be very careful about trying to remember versus trying to look at the position. This blunders a knight on d4.
Right.
So
yep,
preliminary move is what?
I just take the knight.
You just take the knight. I take the
Yep.
pawn. And
Then
this
I
is going to
play
be very important when you first start playing this. If you all of a sudden have forgotten, hopelessly, do not, I repeat, do not try to kind of remember and fill in the blanks. Just think independently and try to find a reasonable move. That's always going to turn out better than misremembering and blundering something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then after this, it's a castle.
It's a
then
castle.
I'm going e1.
And there is one line where you don't actually fulfill that plan, which is where black plays d5 here. I don't anticipate a lot of people knowing that. Even reaching this far is a tall where I don't know what people are going to play. We're going to see that when you start playing this.
Okay. No, I'd want to play e1 first before doing these pawn moves, right?
No, I would develop the bishop first. Actually, bishop usually comes out first, so that you can
Okay, so then I
establish
want
that pin.
Okay, so then I want to play the bishop first here, and then play the pawns. I get you.
And then play. You can do it in any order. You can play rook e. You can play f4. I wouldn't even play rook e1. That is a move you only play if necessary. So I would immediately start pushing those pawns out.
Okay, well that makes sense to me then.
And then you can tuck your king, rook e1. Queen can also come out to f3, I should point out. You're not in a hurry to play e5. Like, if you don't get a chance to play e5, that doesn't mean your opening strategy has failed. Your position is imposing enough as it is. You don't always have to play e5. You can do something like a queen lift to g3, x-raying the g-pawn. That's also possible. So one of the keys in this opening is going to be to remain flexible and not tie yourself down to the same ideas, and being able to be flexible and inventing new stuff. That makes sense.
That makes sense. Okay, so when would I want to look for queen on f3?
That's just a great move to make in general. Like, if e5 is not immediately appealing, your default is you want to prepare e5. And you do that by playing f4. Usually you tuck your king away and then you play e5, if the situation permits. Now, there are some situations where, for one reason or another, black has found a way to stop you from playing e5. And if you're not as attracted by that possibility, or even if you want some variation, queen f3 is good. And then you bring your other rook to e1, and then e5 could potentially be even stronger. So it's an alternate plan in this position, is to play queen f3, then put the rook on e1, and then play the move e5 and pin the knight. And all of your pieces are then essentially in the game, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So, you know, we're going to do a lot of dedicated work on this opening based on the games that you play in it. But, you know, I don't want to over bog you down with theory first time you look at this line. Essentially, you can do the same thing against bishop c5. You go bishop d3, castles, bishop g5, and tuck your king away, f4, e5. So that's sort of a shortcut to being able to play even if they play bishop c5. So your default is you take the knight, you go bishop d3, bishop g5, etc. Is that kind of making sense?
Makes sense to me, yeah.
So that is, I would say, kind of a level 1 crash course in the Scotch, 4-night Scotch. Hopefully, once you start playing it, I will get a sense of how people actually respond to it at your level. I don't know what people are going to do most frequently, so that'll be a learning experience for me. And on the basis of that, we're going to deepen our analysis in the direction that most people play.
Okay. Make it more focused. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So that'll be. I mean, do you think you would potentially try this on your own, or do you feel like you would want one more like analysis session in the Scotch before you?
No, I think I could definitely try it on my own. A lot of it, like you said, seems like intuitive moves that I would most likely recognize. I'd hope, if I'm not sucking fat ass.
And that's in question, but it's not the sort of opening where if you fuck it up, you still get a fundamentally sound position with good development. So what I want to make clear is that you don't need to adhere religiously to these ideas. These ideas are guidelines for how to play. That doesn't mean in every single position you play exactly like that. You want to make normal. I'm trying to give you a compass that allows you to play virtually any position. That's the ultimate goal. You can see any position from any opening and be able to play it decently. That's what a grandmaster can do. You're not there yet, but that's what you're aiming for by the time.
We're not far off.
Exactly. We're knocking on the door, basically.